Welcome, welcome, patrons. The seasons have changed and the weather is starting to get reasonable again, so it's time for another update video. Summer 2021 edition. Read Lyrium and The Idol. This is kind of a twofer, so the first comment is Michael Evans. You said something about not knowing for sure where the Lyrium came from at the Temple of Sacred Ashes. The idea that it was already there and got tainted in the explosion makes the most sense to me, because if you take Oghren with you into the Temple in Dragon Age Origins, he will say something about sensing a lot of Lyrium in the walls, and how that might have something to do with why the temple was so well preserved. And then The Kingdom, which is actually another Dragon Age YouTube lore channel that you should go check out. And I'm actually on his channel now playing Dungeons & Dragons, but it's D&D themed. I play a Tranquil. Anyway, enough advertisement. He says, about the red lyrium at the Temple of Sacred Ashes, Solus speculates Corypheus' magic drew on the lyrium beneath the temple and corrupted it. I interpret this as Corypheus drawing power from the lyrium, and that connection tainted it. But this is Solus, so we should take that with a grain of salt. That's just what I believe. As for the Red Templars, I suspect they changed because their bodies had already been changed by regular lyrium, as Cole explains. So red lyrium not only grows on them, but gives them powers, while others just sort of grow it and then that's it. But again, just my interpretation. So yeah, Michael and Cole basically said everything that needs to be corrected, and I have nothing much to add. And I know it's a little bit of speculation, but it's better than just saying, I don't know, which is kind of what I did in the video. So there was lyrium in the mountain, and Corypheus might have tainted it. Neil Donnan says, for the statue in real life, little bits are usually the ones that get damaged first. Ears, fingers, arms, legs, and details. So here's the thing. This is absolutely correct. But when the idol regenerated, these bits, the hands and arms, still didn't come back. For whatever reason. Did they not come back because they weren't supposed to be there in the first place? Or did they not come back because he still technically exists somewhere? Like, did Bartran actually snap off a piece of it? Well, that doesn't make sense. Like, he found it after. And when Hawk found it, I don't know where he was missing the bit. So, I don't know. So, like, did someone else down the line just has, like, the dude's arms? And since they're remaining, it doesn't get regenerated or something? Like, I don't know. Nen Bellinaris says, hey Katie, thanks for the shout out, more or less. I was the one who posted the comment about Varric and the Inquisitor talking about Meredith's statue still being in the gallows. One thing I'd forgotten about at the time was that Varric and Blackwell also have a companion chat about that as well. I'm not going to read the companion chat, but here it is. As I also mentioned to them, yeah, I honestly looked for the comment that was telling me about this, but I just couldn't find it. So I'm very sorry I couldn't, shout them out and say thank you for leaving the comment, because it's been years and I still missed it. So thank you so much. Tulkas Bloodeye says, if the female reaching through the halo does represent reaching through the fade, then could the two male figures be the same figure, i.e. the same way Cole manifests himself? And since it's the presence of and the passing through the veil that drives spirits insane, then this procedure of helping a spirit manifest could have been quite common, and the Dwarven Tide could have been the location where the procedure was performed, or at least related to it. This is a great theory, and I just kind of want to throw it some attention. It could be that there isn't really three figures, but two, and one is split into two, the spirit and the physical. This also kind of makes some sense, as in even in the story from Tevinter Nights, they only really mention two figures? Or they only mention... It's not that they say it only has two figures, they only mention two of the three, but okay, I think this has more ground to stand on than people might give it credit for. Andraste. RRC says, yes, I love Chantry lore. I'm so excited for the series, to be honest. A few things that support your theory in that the writers will go with the World of Theda's description and something about her betrayal in-game. So we have a codex entry from Selene and her ambassador to Ferelden, Codex Culture of Ferelden, in which Selene sort of roasts Ferelden for a couple lines until she says, they are of course willful, dirty, disorganized people who somehow gave rise to our prophet. If anyone was going to claim that Andraste was born in Jader, meaning Orlais, it would have been the Empress of Orlais. But Selene doesn't. Honestly, it's more likely that Justinia II was trying to rewrite history and spin it in Orlais' favor, and therefore the Chantries due to their close ties, and we can maybe dismiss her claims as in-lore misinformation that happens sometimes. About her description as blonde or redhead, there's actually a little caption on the Art of Dragon Age, page 240, because even the bloody artwork has lore, that says something interesting about Andraste. An Orlesian triptych, I don't know how to pronounce it, depicts Andraste as a warrior and a matriarch, where a more crudely drawn Ferelden panel focuses principally on her as a warrior. Images based on the illuminating. The chant differs depending on culture, even if the subject matter is the same. Honestly, this not only calls to attention the difference between the two countries, but also how there might be more depictions of Andraste depending on the region. Also, I wonder if her blonde hair is somehow in relation to the Valmonts, since Selene and Judical I seem to have pale hair. Maybe there are other Valmonts that had too. It's not too crazy considering how we know they aren't afraid of exploiting the chantry for political clout. See Divine Amara III. Also, that depiction appears in the Winter Palace's little chantry saying that Selene's aunt painted it. Granted, that might be just because it's tradition at this point, but I thought to mention it. Great work, Katie. Another great post by RRC. I don't really have anything to add, perfectly explained. Rouge Villajoin says, random question, but we've met Shartan, haven't we? In the Temple of Sacred Ashes when you were answering the riddles. I know this may not be actual Shartan, but seeing as I guess a spirit who appears as him in the temple with the other people in Andraste life, doesn't that prove his existence? So let's talk about the Temple of Sacred Ashes a bit. In that one section where you meet various parts of the stories of Andraste, the ghosts aren't actually ghosts, but spirits taking the form of these people. We all knew this. All right, move on, Katie. With the story of Andraste being so powerful, I think it's within the realm of possibility that there was no one Shartan, but the belief of the faithful created a spirit that took on what people thought Shartan was. It's also possible that the Shartan we meet in the temple was just one of the many Shartans, or that there was actually just one Shartan, and that was Shartan, and this is Shartan. Meeting a spirit and using it as proof that they existed is a bit tricky, but another question to ask is if that actually matters or not. Maybe one Shartan exists now because a spirit became Shartan. Long story short, it could really go either way, but honestly, I think the simple answer is yes, there was one Shartan, and we met something who was pretending to be him at the Temple of Sacred Ashes. And Shartan could have been his real name or his title, I don't know. Common Theories, Part 3. Believe It 1051 says, I would just like to point out that it's impossible for Andraste to have been a mage and for the story to still make sense. The reason people followed her is because she told of the Maker as the one true god of their world, and this Maker responded to her in visible ways. So when Andraste fought the Imperium, there were these massive events like earthquakes, floods, fires, famines, etc. that wiped out Tevinter's forces. This all happened because a normal woman prayed for it. Any doubters would have suspected her as a mage by default and would have checked to see if this is the case by watching her. It's easy to confirm who is a mage and who is not. Magic is a visible effect, and Andraste must have shown none at all for people to believe she had a connection to the Maker, who was the true source of the miracles. Also, Andraste could not have been carrying Mythal because she was betrayed and burned alive until Astarion ran her through. Mythal would have prevented that since she was betrayed herself. I think BioWare's first presented the Chantry account of the Maker, the world creation, the old gods, Andraste, and the like as historical fact in Origins through 2, and then in Inquisition they decided to make it more ambiguous. Now they might be going in a totally different direction with it to include more Elvian pantheon influence. So I mostly included this because there were a lot of comments on the Andraste video and how it just makes sense for her to be a mage, so I wanted to highlight a good reason for her not being one. Although why I'm not a big fan of the Andraste's Mythal thing, and I don't personally buy it, I don't think I really agree with the reasoning that she couldn't have been with Mythal and Mythal would have prevented her death. That being said, I don't think Andraste is Mythal just because I don't think that makes sense for the writers to go that direction. But a little bit meta, I think. But yeah, thank you for the comment. Susaga says, my current theory on where Dumont went is Archon Hysarian, which means I will be expanding or discarding my theory as I play Dragon Age 4. Aren't we all? After Andraste died, he suddenly heard the voice of the Maker and wrote a story where the Magisters were tricked by the old gods. Everyone decided this was just propaganda, not least because he had no way of knowing the events of the events, as he wasn't there. Except if he had Dumont's whispering in his ear, he technically was there. Oh, and that story was called The Canticle of Silence. So, a great addition to the theory. I still have questions as to where the soul is now, although perhaps it passed on to the next life, as anyone's soul does when they die. I don't know, I'm unsure if old god souls can pass into Thetis afterlife. But I will say the World of Thedas also says that he had such good information on the events of the Golden City because he has the whole archive of the Imperium to his disposal. So that's at least the in-lore explanation. But yeah, that could work too. Kordillus Drakon I. Antonio A. says, Kordillus was a straight Chad, picks a warrior queen, uniting warring tribes, unites his religion, good friends with an elf, combats the blight till he dies of old age. Really is such a shame his junior threw away all he had accomplished and damaged his legacy. If I remember correctly, the Valmonts are descendants of the Drakons through a female line, correct? So, I don't think so. This is kind of a call for help in the community because the line of our Legion families is kind of unknown to me. Like, they have some charts on the wikis, but they're kind of splintered. I don't know. But, like, doing some, like, research on it, like, I didn't, like, look super deep, but, like, a couple hours into it, I'm not really finding anything that says the Valmonts and the Drakon have a connected line. But I guess it's possible that a female member of the Drakon Mary did family in. Either way, I did look, but I couldn't find anything about that. And that's all I have. Do you still have ingrained questions, proof that I'm wrong? Comments about your own fan theory? Feel free to tweet me at @GillerThon on Twitter or send a PM teaser Gillenon on Reddit. The rest are all.